In this lesson, we're going to look at how hormones are used to treat infertility, and this comes after the lesson on how hormones can be used to prevent pregnancy. For the first part, I just want you to sit back, really concentrate, and listen carefully. Have you ever heard of the term IVF? Do you know what it means? Well, the I means in, the V stands for vitro, which means outside the body, and F is for fertilization. Now, you may remember from Key Stage 3 that fertilization is when an egg, which has 23 chromosomes, joins with a sperm, which also has 23 chromosomes, to get back to the diploid number of 46 chromosomes, which is the number of chromosomes in any body cell except for the egg and sperm. So there you have it, in vitro fertilization. This can be defined as the fertilization of an egg by sperm that occurs outside of the body. Now, do any of you by any chance know who or what Louise Brown was famous for? Louise Brown is now in her early 40s, and she was actually born on the 25th of July, 1978, and she was the first baby to be born using IVF. Her mother was unable to conceive naturally because her fallopian tubes were blocked, so the egg couldn't actually travel to get fertilized. Now, I wonder if you can spot the error over here. This is one of the news headlines that came out. Meet Louise, the world's first test tube arrival. Super babe. Now, we very often used to refer to IVF babies as test tube babies, but actually a test tube wasn't involved at all. It actually takes place inside a petri dish. So they remove the egg from the female's ovaries, they then add some sperm from a male, and this is fertilized, in fact, inside a petri dish. Now, when asked to describe how IVF occurs, many pupils make the mistake of starting with eggs are collected from the woman's ovaries. Well, yes, they are, but you need to be able to give a lot more detail. So there should be some biological alarm bells ringing. So let's think about this. Considering what you've learned about the menstrual cycle, if a doctor is going to collect eggs from a woman, which hormones would she be given to help this situation? Pause the video and discuss this for a minute with your neighbor before carrying on. Well, absolutely. The woman needs to be injected with FSH and LH first. Remember, FSH helps to stimulate the eggs to be matured, and then LH is used to actually cause the egg to be released from the ovary, and we call that process ovulation. So step 1 is the woman is injected with FSH and LH. In step 2, we know that the hormones often cause the woman's ovaries to make multiple eggs. So that's much more than is usually released each cycle. Those eggs are then collected collected from the woman, and then sperm are selected from the father. So they use a microscope to make sure that they are selecting the strongest sperm. Now, for this next bit, it says, using key technology in your answer, explain why gametes are chosen for this process rather than body cells. So gametes is another name for sex cells. I'm going to ask you to pause the video and discuss this answer with your neighbor before starting again. Okay, let's have a look at how we would answer this, because we know that gametes contain the haploid number of chromosomes. That's half the number of chromosomes, which is 23 in humans. So that once they fuse together in vitro fertilization, we get back to the full amount of chromosomes we get in human body cells, which is 46. Right, so step 5. Right, in step 5, the selected sperms are inserted into each egg in a petri dish, and we then have another question to ask. So, I'm sure you've seen this program on TV. If you had to manipulate these letters, what word can you come up with that means a fertilized egg? Pause the video for 30 seconds and see if you can work it out. Okay, so a fertilized egg is often referred to as a zygote. It's a very good keyword for you to use to raise the quality of your answer. A zygote is a fertilized egg. And here's another one for you. This word is something that the fertilized egg or zygote will develop into. Pause for 30 seconds and see if you could work this out. How are you doing? Right, well done if you got the word embryo. Remember, an embryo then develops into a fetus. So we shouldn't refer to the unborn baby as a baby. It is an embryo and then a fetus until it is delivered. Right, so in step 6, the zygote is allowed to develop into an embryo, and the scientists control those conditions very, very carefully to support this. Here we go, another misconception. The baby is born in the petri dish. The fetus will still, remember, the fetus is still going to develop inside the mother's uterus. So they choose the best embryos and implant it in the womb or the uterus of the mother. So the baby is not born in a petri dish. Okay, step 7. 2 embryos are chosen and inserted into the mother's uterus. Another name for the uterus is the womb. So let's have a look at how we're doing. It says here, 2 embryos are chosen and inserted into the mother's uterus. Right. So, why are the embryos being chosen? Why might the embryos have been checked? What might they have been checked for first? In the second question, when a woman gets pregnant naturally, normally only 1 embryo develops in her uterus. Why might they have inserted 2 in this particular case? And question number 3, as 2 embryos have been inserted, what type of pregnancy is often associated with those who've been treated with IVF? Pause the video for 2 minutes and see if you can discuss these answers with your neighbor. Okay, so for the first question, we need to choose the embryos because we screen them and we choose only the most healthiest embryos possible for insertion. One of the controversies or ethics around in IVF is that more specific details are chosen of the embryo, such as the sex or what potentially the hair color could be. Now, that is not ethical and not allowed. So these labs that undergo IVF are very, very carefully regulated. Right, the second question, the reason why more than 1 embryo is inserted is because there is it's more likely that one of them will survive. IVF is an incredibly expensive process to go through, so you want to increase the chances of success. And for the third question, multiple pregnancies are very common with IVF, so you get unidentical twins because different eggs and sperm have been fertilized. So very often, unidentical twins can be due to IVF treatment. So now you need to consider what are the points for or against IVF, and this is a very common question asked in exams. So, of course, it allows couples who couldn't conceive naturally to do so. But of course, on the other side, suddenly you could have multiple births, which are dangerous both for the mother and the unborn babies. I want you to stop for a minute and see if you can write a more detailed argument for and against IVF. You don't need to write them down, simply discuss it. And restart the video again in a minute. Okay, now to summarize this, the next 3 slides have the most important points that you need to know from the section. So this first slide talks about IVF, and you can see the steps involved, which you need to be able to memorize. So a good revision card would be define and explain the process of IVF. The next slide that you will need to copy is about the benefits and the concerns of IVF. Again, that is a good revision card to add to your collection. And then the final one I've included is about Clomerphene Therapy, something else you need to know. It says for infertile women who don't ovulate regularly, a drug called Clomifene is used. And this causes more FSH and LH than normal to be released into the blood, causing eggs to mature and to be released by ovulation. And then by knowing when the women will be ovulating, the couple can then have intercourse during this time to improve their chances of becoming pregnant. So, rewind the videos slightly and copy down in your book the last 3 slides before creating your revision notes. Well done.